Out of Order Podcast, episode 14.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Thank you for tuning in to the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Today's sponsor is me. I've started an email list over at outoforderjameskalita.com, and I'd like to invite you all to head over there and add your emails. We all know that social media platforms are not kind to the firearms community. Just the other day, Brownells was taken down off of YouTube. We've heard of lots of different firearms groups being taken down and blocked on Facebook. So I would like to maintain communication with the firearms community. So if you head over to outoforderjameskalita.com, click on any episode, you'll find a link there where you can sign up and be notified of news, stay in communication if we ever get taken offline, and every once in a while I'm going to try to find some really cool stuff to send out to you guys. Today's guest is Christopher Smith. He is the founder of Poor Man's Black Rifle, PMBR. They have a new website coming out, but you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and we talk about so much today. Talk about building firearms on a budget, building versus buying, division in the 2A community, how we need to learn from one another. Even talk a little bit about parenting and training. So now, here's Christopher Smith.
Christopher Smith, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So, Christopher, you started the Poor Man's Black Rifle a few years ago. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Poor Man's Black Rifle just started upon just being frustrated with a lot of the blogs and various other web pages and Facebook groups that were out there where people were trying to get information and they were being obliviated on the page with posting up something that was not the brand everybody seemed to support. And therefore, I became angry and told my wife, I said, you know what, I'm just going to start my own. And it is growing up to 14,000 members, and it is very successful. And we've branched out into Instagram and to Twitter. And now we are running a MeWe page. And here within the week, we're going to be launching PoorMan'sBlackRifle.com, James.
Great. And so I've been a member of your group for a little while now on Facebook. What can people expect on the website?
What I've done on my website, sir, is I've reached out to almost everybody on our page, and I'm going to start off, rather than everybody reaching out to different things, I'm going to bring all our discounts onto one page at PoorMan'sBlackRifle.com and still continue on with the same kind of discounting and the same kind of sale prices that everybody is used to.
Oh, that's great. And so, you told me a little while ago, but what's the mission for PMBR?
PMBR has a mission that every American citizen who's legally and mentally able to own a firearm should be able to defend themselves, their family, and their country, not depending upon their income.
Great. And so, how is the reception been? Because I observed what you mentioned too. When you're in most of these groups or these forums, there's definitely a tendency to go towards one brand, and to say if you say things like buy once, cry once, get what you pay for, and there never seems to be investigation into value. So how do you draw in those people that do want to find value, that do want to look at other brands?
Well, James, I I don't really think it is about drawing those gentlemen in, or ladies for that matter, because we do have quite a 3% women on our page too who enjoy shooting. But the thing about it is we as a community in the Second Amendment world, we've divided ourselves, much like a lot of the things that we sit and post memes and want to be our keyboard warriors out there for the Second Amendment, but we find ourselves just as guilty on our social media pages rather than acting as a community and a brotherhood. We divide ourselves by looking down upon someone for from going from a possible high-end type of parts down to the low end. And in my experience, sir, I have found some high-end parts that I have learned through Poor Man's Black Rifle, where I've had people actually talk to me, not chastise me, but privately message me and tell me their experiences rather than just sit there and bash, where I learned from other people. That's the biggest thing we all need to do in the Second Amendment world if we're into building any kind of firearm, is to learn from one another. My mistakes have cost me. You go out and you can find something that's cheaper, and we get the sales process where some people can afford those things through PMBR. But the biggest thing here is knowing where you can cut corners and where you can't. I think that is it. And learning your rifle. Buying a rifle is a wonderful thing. I'm not saying my first one I bought was a Smith & Wesson M&P Sport, but James, I spent so much money reconstructing that thing that just a light bulb went off one day, about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and just like, I can build these. And I started finding out that it is much more economical to build them and tailor them to your taste and the type of shooting you want to do. It's not every person out there is sitting thinking they're owning an AR for self-defense. There's a lot of people who just enjoy it for sport, for competition, for three-gun. So it's trial and error with parts. There are, we get bashed a lot on PMBR, and we've gone through a big transition several times, James, with other groups and other people coming in and trolling our place just to tick everybody off. And this is Chinese junk. There is some Chinese junk out there. I do agree, but there is some American people out there who are making parts who are just as poor quality. We do live in a world of global economy at this time. I don't think it's something we should look down on. We sit and not to draw this out for a long time here, James, but the whole thing about we have to remember in the Second Amendment community is the same people that we're making fun of for buying something that came from overseas, as they're sitting there bashing the person on a Samsung phone watching a Samsung TV and driving a Toyota or a BMW. We live in a global economy, and we all need to realize that. And we need to realize that we are all in here for the same game, and the end result will always be the same. In the words of Charleston Heston, you have to pull this thing from my cold, dead hands, and we need to come together and quit being divided. This division in the United States has really spilled over into our Second Amendment community too, as far as even having some of my friends that I know and stuff that believe they should even get stricter laws on different things, and I'm at a point where I look at it from just an aspect of we need to reread our Second Amendment fully and read all of our amendments, because every amendment matters, but they didn't put the amendment at the top of the list to the Second Amendment at the second from the top for no reason. And that is kind of how I feel about our builds and what PMBR is. We should be a brotherhood and helping one another and not bashing. I don't think anything has ever result. I mean, if you feel good at the end of the day to sit down to dinner with your family that you just totally crucified a poor guy who's trying to figure out how to own an AR, and maybe he was a former Democrat, and he's turned and he's trying to find out what we're all talking about, and we bash him. We've gained nothing. We need to live by example and walk our walk and talk our talk.
Agreed. And a lot of times I find that when people are looking for less expensive parts, it's because they don't understand what it does, and they don't know why they're spending, for a particular thing. And I never understood why carbon fiber handguards were so expensive until I picked one up, and then it was like a light bulb. It's like, oh, I get it. Okay, so what advice would you have for someone that is on a budget, that is thinking about building their first black rifle? What would you say to them?
Research. That's the first thing I would do, is research. It's what I did. I take a lot of beatings in my page sometimes from speaking truth. I don't speak anything but truth. And I will listen to opinions, and I know a lot of people believe sometimes that things are what they are. It's just like some children growing up with their father who always owned a Chevy. Your odds of you growing up buying GMC parts, GM parts, and GM vehicles is probably great. But there are advantages to researching by finding out your quality of your steel or your aluminum. You're going to get in all kinds of battles, James, with, your 6061 aluminum and your 7075. It's just a matter of opinion and your usage. I mean, if a 7075 has a YT&E much greater than a 6061. However, the 6061 is still used on aircrafts. I mean, it is a rigid aluminum. But as far as like handguards, when you just said, man, I'm going to have to say that you get what you pay for there too. Handguards, I've held some expensive ones and then mediocre, and not saying they're mediocre in the product, but the mediocre pricing, middle pricing. You probably are paying for a little more in the brand. However, there are some handguards out there right now that are very affordable for everyone. My go-to for my handguards is Stinger, STNGR, Stinger, and they're made right here in the United States out of Texas, and they're my go-to for everything because of, number one, is it's made in the United States, and number two, they're a non-timing handguard. They are a wonderful handguard with a barrel nut you put on, you adjust, you don't have to worry about it. And that's what I would say to anybody that's first starting out. Go the old KISS spirit, keep it simple, stupid. And that is it in a nutshell. Don't go out for the all extravagant add-ons and accessories. Start out small, basic, and work your way up and learn. You're going to make mistakes, but it's just as easy to trade off with a friend or find something else to upgrade your parts. It's a learning process. It's a learning curve, and yes, it costs a lot. But if for the guy who just wants a home defense something, then he can leave it right there. And if he's not out shooting it every day, but for some of us, I don't know if you shoot daily here, James, or weekly, but it's just it becomes a part of you, as an extension of you, and you want it to be fine tuned.
Absolutely, yeah. So what's your history? How did you get into building ARs or get into firearms in general?
Well, could you say that again, please, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. So how did you get into firearms? Did you grow up around them, or?
Oh, I grew up with a grandfather who was an avid hunter and fisherman. And then I had a father who was in archery and shooting, and they were all my grandfathers, including my great-grandfathers. I mean, I have a grandfather many greats back who was one of the generals of the American Revolution, so this has been something through our family for years, for hundreds of years, actually. But the thing is, I could say I got out of it for a little while, just being adolescent, but as I got older and understood the importance of the Second Amendment is when it struck me that in order to exercise a freedom, you have to train yourself to do it. And our Second Amendment says a well-organized and trained militia. And if we're going to be a militia, we need to be well-trained. And I'm just very passionate about it. I don't know how to really put it in words, James, all the time, but it's just a passion of mine that I want everybody to be able to understand that this is a God-given right to us to defend ourselves.
Yeah, that's very true. So you mentioned training. What advice do you have for people in training? A guy, he comes in, he builds his first AR, 500, he gets it done for $500. What do you recommend for people in training?
Well, you could contact your local gun store. There's always somebody somewhere around my area. There's a couple people up here. Wayne Buck up here in Michigan is a vet, and he trains self-defense and weapon functionality and proper use of the weapon. You have a lot of people out there when they do buy those guns. Just spend a lot of time at the range first. Learn it. Don't be embarrassed by not knowing anything. Ask questions. There's guys there, normal guys who are at your gun range are going to, if you can say, hey, and if you see they have a couple AR platforms sitting there by them, they will be more than glad to help you. There are some wonderful out there. Don't get me wrong on saying that everybody, there is absolutely wonderful men out there, especially if you find an older man and an elder. I just call them my elders, people I learned from. And you need, if you bought a $500 AR, save your money for a little bit and go get a little training with that 500 AR. Find your local, Google search it, find somebody close, find a local, maybe even a local little militia to go and join and just go do some weekend warrior type stuff and learn. I mean, if you're seriously owning an AR because of what you believe as your constitution in your heart of what the Second Amendment stands for, then you need to be trained. It's a waste of money to put another $1,000 in your gun because it's just like anybody else watching a Sunday morning NASCAR race. Everybody thinks they can make that left-hand turn all the way around that track 100 times, but you can have a $5,000 AR sitting in your hands, and if you don't know how to use it, you might as well have a $500 AR in your hands. And that is what I said to you, the training and ammunition. You don't need top-quality ammunition right off the bat. Get some Plinkering top. But training on your AR and training your family for situations is very important, too. I have 5 children of my own, 3 teens and 2 toddlers, and I tell you, they know a code word. When we say it's time or whatever, we don't get all spookied out, prepper type of people here, but we also have ourselves that we are prepped to know when a code word is used, that there's no questions asked, you do what you're told. And they know where my oldest knows where things are in case they're here alone. And they know how to use it, and they're well trained on it also. Training is everything. James, training is everything. it is so much different. I have never been in a pure battle ever as a vet. I have not been there. I haven't. But when you go and train and have somebody hollering at you and putting you in a situation where you've got to make split-second decisions, you panic. You my gosh, you forget to disengage your bolt. You forget to drop your mag when you're out. I mean, there's just all kinds of scenarios that happen when you are under fire. And if you are, like I said, not everybody owns this for this purpose, but if you are owning it and believing in what the Second Amendment stands for, you must get trained and understand and learn to move and be fluid with a group of men so you can be effective.
That is excellent advice. What do you say? I don't know if you still encounter these people, but for those folks out there that say nobody needs an AR, or the founding fathers didn't envision these weapons, how do you answer those arguments?
Well, James, this is kind of a two-part question. First off, when someone says to me that the Second Amendment wasn't written for today, well, what was our First Amendment? They only used quill pens, so I look at it from that aspect, and and it's the same aspect if we could sit there and tear apart the big good book, the Bible itself. Even can you say that's applicable today? It was written 2,000 years ago, as they say. Well, we can sit there and change the words even to the scriptures itself to fit our needs, but you can't change. You can't change what's written. It's in black and white, and just as our Second Amendment was written. Our Second Amendment, it was well thought out. It wasn't you got to really bounce back and be open-minded about your Second Amendment. And I hate keep using the word Second Amendment because it sounds cliche. But in the same token of what we're getting at is if you don't understand the history of why we are where we were today, and how we got here and how we became a nation, you really need to spend some time learning and not pulling from media. You need to get yourself into a library, pull out random books and just start reading and learning, talking with some old vets before they all pass away on us. I have sat for hours and hours with my father, my grandfather, who was a top turret gunner on a B-24, my grandfather, who was in World War II stationed over in Greenland, and my father, who was in Vietnam. And we can sit and point fingers, well, those wars didn't count. No, they went there under the premise of what they stood for the United States. They were ordered by their commander-in-chief to serve, and they did. And my father volunteered. He didn't get drafted. He volunteered. He knew he had a duty, whether it was agreeable or not. So to answer the Second Amendment and whether it's applicable today, go sit down and talk to a vet before you make a decision. That's what you got to do. Because you know what? You can spit on that vet and you can make fun of him and tell him he's a baby killer or whatever, and he can smile at you and say, that's what I'm fighting for your right to say that to me. And that's the ignorance that we have today. Now, you say, why does anybody need an AR-15, James? Well, for lack of better terms, I would answer like when I get asked, I have a family member who says, well, what? I'm not against firearms, but there's just no need for someone to have 30 rounds in a magazine. Well, then ask me why you don't use one square piece of toilet paper.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a whole roll there, then I just use one piece, sir. Because, and I joke with people sometimes, and they say, when you go hunting, now up here in Michigan, you're only allowed 5 rounds, but I always joke, and when people says, what do you need 30 rounds for? I says, what if there's 30 deer? But the thing about it is we established our Second Amendment, James, as you know, and I'm sure you did. I've checked out some of your writings and stuff, and I see that we're eye to eye on this subject. But and then you have to say, well, you don't need no military gun. Well, you need to research again. The AR-15 platform is actually a civilian level. It's not even military grade. As a matter of fact, if you took an AR-15 to go under fire that some of these guys have done over in Afghanistan, Iraq, you would come back with a melted barrel. It's not quite military grade. It can defend. Yes, it can. But it's a shortcut to thinking, James. It's just a shortcut to thinking. You cannot rewrite what's already written in the Constitution of the United States and sit here and battle with me that you cannot. If my police department came door to door with the AR, I believe that we should be able to have everything they have. I mean, how many people do we see on the internet and see things come across all the time where somebody's bought a tank, they've bought, I mean, it just goes on and on. I mean, it's not that we're sitting here trying to prepare for war.
Right.
That's not what we're here for. This is not what. But we also are exercising the right in case we have to face tyranny, and that is what our forefathers wrote the Second Amendment on. And here we have a new country in 1776. And we didn't get ratified on the Second Amendment till 1791. Now, there's some serious thought going into writing this Constitution. That's the point that I'm trying to, when I talk with people, is this was not done lightly. This was not. But what we have in America is a heart problem. It is not a gun problem. It is a heart problem. I don't want to get all preachy with you, James, but we came over here as defiant, angry people seeking a new land from exactly what they're doing right now in the UK. The UK is a cesspool of exactly why our colonists left there before. It's exactly why. They have places to turn in their knives, and now they are trying to pass a law in the UK to take the points off their knives so it's not so easily to stab. They can't have guns. Their policemen don't carry guns. But it is at a point that we are repeating ourselves. History is repeating itself. It is our best teacher. And we, as a Second Amendment community, all sit back here like the frog that you sit on the cold water on the stove and you turn it up. We are cooking right now, folks. We are cooking. It is boiling and that frog ain't hopping out. And for us to sit back on our computers and talk about all this is a moot point anymore. I am not trying to rile up or start a revolution. That's not my point. But my point is it's time for us to get up off the couch and close those computers and get off our technologies and look around us and see what's going on. I mean, we're in a mess right now. And when we are throwing our vets on the streets but bringing in immigrants who don't even want to go through the citizenship classes like my forefathers did and paid their dues to get in there to become. I mean, my family came over on my father's side. They came over with the last name of Schmidt. And I'm a Smith now. They changed it because he couldn't find a job because he was a foreign name. And so they changed it to Smith. And so what I mean is this goes deep back into even my own life. We have to get to a point where we do not turn off CNN, turn off MSNBC, turn off everything. Quit being fed and spoon-fed with information and think for yourself. Listen to that little still voice inside yourself and know when something's right or wrong. You don't need to be told it. We as human beings, I believe there's two types of people left in this world. There's humans and there's human beings. Humans are just heartless people. But when you're a human being, you have empathy, you care, you reach out, you see your neighbor struggling, you have an abundance in your garden, you carry a basket of food over to them, you help one another, you create this brotherhood, this neighborhood. This is what our forefathers foresaw, and if they were alive today, I would have to say that they'd be shooting by now.
Yeah, I often feel that way. Yeah. I remember it was a 3% tax, and now we're up to nearly 40, and yeah. So I've been asking all of my guests if there were any books that they recommend that gun owners read, either gun related or liberty related.
Well, sure. I got two of them right here in front of me that I read. Well, liberty related. One second here on here. Liberty related. Well, first of all, liberty related. Man, I've gone clear back to reading some of Ben Franklin stuff. I've gone and dug in some deep old libraries to find some things in my past. As far as gun-related, I'd have to answer you back on the liberty while I'm looking here. But gun-related, there's a guy named Ryan Kleckner. He is he's a sniper, military, and he is an advocate and now a lawyer for helping people get FFLs and gun rights. He wrote a book called Long Range Shooting. It's a beginner's guide to precision rifle shooting. Wonderful, well-executed book. It is wonderful. If you are in a community where you cannot find training, then do it yourself. Learn. You have to learn to discipline yourself to better yourself. That is, I know, a hard thing nowadays with the millennial generations. Everybody wants to sit inside and play PlayStation. But we are at a point where we have to train our next generation. I'm 50 years old, sir, and I have my Second Amendment posted on my wall. I sit down with my children and I go over their history lessons and stuff, and I always close the book when we're done. And now I said, let me tell you what I know, and let you make a decision and you think about it. And then I usually come back, we go for a ride or something, and we just take the one of them that you were talking with and just sit down and say, hey, so did you give some thought to what I said to you about? Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I Googled and researched this, and this, and, my oldest child has found out that, we are no longer really a republic or a democracy. It's an oligarchy. We're run by a small deep state of corporations and money, and she didn't see that before because that's not what she was taught. They're indoctrinated, right. And it's up to us as parents to be parents and to save what we've done and our forefathers done. Like, my children really aren't made to write cursive, but I teach them how to read it and do it and write it still, because you're going to one day. You never know. Your child might be the one person that comes back and says, "Well, let me read you the constitutions that we used to have." And it's you got to create patriots. Even the seriousness. I'm sorry to kind of go off a tangent on you here, James, but it's just very passionate to me. Even for your children, when we go to ball games and things like that, they would make fun of me because they just play the national anthem. Nobody sings it anymore. I sit and sing it. It means something to me. It still will bring tears to my eyes when I sing it because I'm so proud of what my lineage has done to get to this point. I've spent many years of my life overseas. I've gone all over. China, Hong Kong, Japan, Haiti, the Philippines. We, as a nation, James, are so spoiled. Matter of fact, we take days to make decisions on what color car to buy. There's places over there, they didn't care if it had rust just so it started. They don't care about that toilet flushing. And we have just become so ingrained into having it all rather than realizing that we had a group of people come over and leave a country. Are there things that happened when they came over to this country I don't agree with? Yes, there were. And if anybody understands history, they would know that back in 1790, after the Constitution, the deep state started clear back then. We really did some horrific things to expand westward. But in reality, you have to move forward and put that backwards and learn from it and look forward to us of preserving what we have and what they fought for today. We're a long way away. We've strayed very far. But I don't know right off top. I'm looking through some of my stuff as I'm talking to you in my gun room here because I have a little cave here that I come down and do all my reloading and everything with and my building. And I don't have anything specific to give you on about liberty. Okay. But the one thing...
go ahead.
But no, it's okay, James. You go on ahead. I've rambled on enough, sir. Go ahead.
I'll go with the Ben Franklin, and we'll work with that. So I thank you for being on the show. Where online should people go to look for you? What's the new website going to be?
PoorMansBlackRifle.com. It's PoorMansRif or BLACKRIFLE. PoorMansBlackRifle.com. And you can find me on MeWe and Instagram. And I can direct anybody who's hearing it. I can get them directed towards my Facebook page. We'll see how long it stays standing. They are deleting them at a high number of rate. So, but yes, sir. I really appreciate you asking me to come on here, and I know I'm long-winded, but this is a very strong passion of mine, James, and I really appreciate you inviting me and asking me to be a part of your show.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so glad we got to do the interview. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thanks again for tuning in to the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Please head over to the show notes page, Out of Order James Kalita /Christopher, where you'll find links to Poor Man Black Rifle. And again, you can sign up for the email list and check out any of our sponsoring affiliate links. We'll see you next time.